No problem. Thank you. You can lower your hands now. Oh, hi, Tom. Thank you. Thank you so much. That's great. Thanks, Tom. Okay, welcome back, everybody, and a special welcome to our colleagues online. Hope you are suitably recovered on this Saturday morning to enjoy this next presentation. I'm just going to ask people to take their seats now because we're tight for time. Thank you.
No, I didn't do that. I didn't do that.
Okay, so we are about to start the first part of a two-part presentation on treating relational trauma with EMDR. I have great pleasure in introducing my colleague Ludwig Cornil, who is a Belgian clinical psychologist who was a founding member of EMDR Belgium in 2001. He's an EMDR trainer. He got the prestigious David Schreiber Award for his contributions to EMDR, and he is also one of the founding members of the European Society for Trauma and Dissociation. He's joined by Olivier, who is a licensed psychologist and psychotherapist, who was a lecturer in Ghent, had done some work around systemic contextual approach, working with families. And both of them are going to be presenting this very interesting presentation around affect-focused EMDR. And I heard this presentation, and those of you who are in Bologna will have heard this presentation last year, and I'm sure you're going to really enjoy it. We'll stop for questions after the first part, just for a few minutes before the break.
Sorry. Apologies, Maeve. I've just got to make just a practical announcement, and then after this session I want to make another announcement. But it's just, we've got a longer session now, and I was very concerned that lots of people were standing. Can room monitors please help people come in and find a seat? Can people also, if you've got bags or anything on a seat, when the room monitor's looking, can you just flag where there's a seat? Because there are some people are choosing to stand because it's cooler over there, but other people just couldn't see seats. Okay, so room monitors, where are the room monitors? And the other, is there a room monitor over this side? Because it's this door that's the main problem. Who's the room monitor? Where are you?
Okay, if you can raise your hand if you have a spare seat next to you so people can move.
Okay,
that's great.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you.
Okay, that's fine. It's covered. No, you stay there now.
That's great.
Yes.
Raise your hand. Okay, so
sorry.
no problem. So after that beautifully smooth presentation, I want to ask you all to welcome Ludwig and Olivier.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you to also EMDR UK and the lovely people from EMDR UK for inviting us, for believing in our model, and for giving us a chance to present it to you, because we hope to bring you something refreshing today. Something maybe to think about when you treat people who suffered childhood trauma with EMDR. At the same time, we don't think we're going to tell you something totally new today. I think a lot of the things we will present to you today, you already do. Last night we had some really interesting conversations with the people from the association, and which made us believe that there are a lot of people who believe we can evolve from the basic protocol to more flexible ways to treat people. And it all started a little 10 years ago, our journey. I just followed the basic protocol with Ludwig. And I think it was the first week, of one of the first weeks after I followed the basic training, that a young woman came into my practice, and she sits down and she told me, no, let's point out first, Ludwig, during the basic training, he told us 3 key elements of childhood trauma, which is feeling alone, feeling powerless, and feeling unworthy, not feeling good enough. So a few weeks later, this woman came into my cabinet, she sits down and she tells me, I have such a painful feeling around my heart area, which makes me feel so alone and so powerless. It's like I feel I'm not good enough. So I thought to myself, this is interesting. This is exactly what Ludwig told me she would feel, but if I want to follow the basic protocol, I need some memories. Do I really need to ask her a memory now? Because she's already feeling what we want her to feel. So I followed my gut and I didn't. I just started processing from the heart area, and like I think some of you might guess what happened is some memories, one after the other, came up spontaneously. Just one after the other. Things she already forgot a long time ago. Later on, I went to supervision with Ludwig, and I asked him if I did well, because I was just beginning with EMDR. I think a lot of supervisors would have told me to stick to the protocol. And that's what I like about Ludwig. Ludwig told me, you maybe did well, because if you asked her about the memory, you would have made her think. And she was already feeling. So why'd make her think if she's already feeling? So this was a bit of a journey for Ludwig and I to work more and more with whatever's available. And if it's a memory that's available, that's great. Then you start off with a memory. But if it's something else, why not? Like, no. How do you do this? No. Wacht, ik zit hier niet op dit ding. Try again. Okay, cool. Like, for example, a client enters a room very angry, which actually happened, I think 2-3 weeks ago. A woman came to me, to my practice, and she enters furious. She was furious because she couldn't find a parking space in the street. But she was so mad, I thought to myself, this is not just about the parking space. So we started processing. I think it was around her stomach, like over her shoulders, I can't remember. And before we knew it, we were in her childhood. She was mad at the world. She was mad at people. She was mad at her parents. And we went on. And these kind of examples strengthen us in the idea that we should work with whatever is available. Like when a client starts to cry spontaneously or has another somatic sensation, anything that can trigger, we can use. And this is something we're wondering. How many people of you have already started processing from something else than a memory? By show of hands, how many people have already started off reprocessing from other stuff? Of course, this is what we hoped. We are not alone. And it would have been very awkward if nobody would have showed hands right now. But thank you very much. We think we're not alone. We think we already do. You already do. We all already do. But we think we should work with whatever's available. And we're ready to move on from the basic protocol to more flexible ways. More flexible ways to treat people with EMDR. So we hope to bring you something, think about, to give you some flexibility people here, people at home, to give people a more individualized way of treatment, to whatever they need, a more customized way. So we want to bring you a roadmap to go deeper into the pain of childhood trauma. And let's first of all start with what is the memory exactly in the therapeutic process? Is it the memory or the traumatic image we want to forget? Do we forget the traumatic? We want to forget it, of course, but do we forget it? No, we process the pain attached to it. So the memory is just an entry point to enter the affect. But the question we want to ask ourselves is, do we want to desynthesize the memories individually? Or do we want to open up the whole traumatic network and process the affect in its totality and resolve symptoms? Because when we talk to colleagues, we often hear that they talk a lot with their clients, and that's their right. And that when they stumble upon a memory, they process the memory, and it's desynthesized as we see it. Some might go associate, but not all do. And if you go back to targets as the memory, there's a big chance you just desynthesize the memory. And the feedback we get from these clients often is, I can now see clearly at this and this and this specific moment in my life. And that's great. It's great to finally look at these moments without feeling this terrible pain. But my symptoms have not moved that much. Because isn't the feeling the reason people suffer? Isn't the big feeling what's bothering these people and what's causing the symptoms? This is a very easy way to look at trauma, how we look at it. At the one side, we have the events, whatever has occurred. It might be specific memories, but it also might be the whole childhood. It might be a period in our life. Whatever has happened in the past has given us a feeling about ourselves, a feeling of being alone, dirty, whatever, rejected. And this feeling has been so intense that it's been sticking to us. And it gives us consequences, it gives us symptoms, it gives us triggers. It gives us symptoms. So how we see it, feeling is always the center of what we want to process. It is the connection between the events and the triggers, the past and the present, and the future fears. And it should always be our main focus while handling people with childhood trauma, with any kind of trauma. But now I'm using the terms affect and feeling in a bit in a random way, so let's go to the semantic nuance, because there's a little difference between affect and feeling. Affect is all the objective sensations we feel in our body while triggered. Heart area, throat, shoulders, shoulder blades, anything. And feeling is the subjective interpretation of those feelings. A lot of people will call the sensation around the heart area of sadness. But somebody else might call it a kind of fear. Who knows? But it takes us to the head. It makes us think. If you ask a client who is already feeling and processing, what is the feeling you're feeling? You see them thinking, how is this called again? I think it's maybe a kind of shame, and you make them think, and you get them out of their process. So affect gives us and the clients an objective tool, an objective aspect where they can stay with their body and don't get lost in the head. So what is our therapeutic goal with any kind of trauma? It is letting the past be the past, like for instance Shapiro said. We got to get past our past in any kind of trauma. And we use often the symbol of phantom pain. And we all know phantom pain. It's a pain in a limb, an arm or a leg that's been amputated. It's rationally completely inexplicable why you should have pain in an arm that's not there anymore. Trauma is a bit of the same thing for us. It's a pain in a thread in our past. It's something that is behind us. And it's rationally, pure rationally, inexplicable why it's still there. But still we feel it. So this is a way we can tell our clients that they are safe today, but that their body gives them another message. And we want to bring the body to where the rational head already is by processing the affect. But the question remains, will we desynthesize the memories individually or open up the whole traumatic network and process it in its totality? An important issue I think we need to think about is what is back to target when we're handling childhood trauma, complex trauma. A whole childhood with a lot of events that have occurred. If you go back to target, do you go to the memory? Because then you're always going to the same memory. And maybe you should rethink this. And this is a picture I had in mind. This is my attempt to draw an octopus. My wife thought it was a spider. Sorry, it was my best shot, actually. But trauma has tentacles. Tentacles to 1988, 1955 maybe. Also to yesterday, but also to triggers, to symptoms, to future fears, to somatic sensations, to anything. So we want to address the center of the whole traumatic network. And look at it a little bit closer. We have simple trauma and complex trauma. We talk about simple trauma and complex trauma as if simple trauma is a one-time event and complex trauma has several events. And it's the same system, like the feeling bow tie. The feeling is the center of what happened and what we're experiencing today. But how we're treating it is different. The basic protocol is known, is famous for its treatment of simple trauma, because simple trauma is a one-time event. And we look at this as a top-down processing. We start with the event, and we go down to the affect, and we process the affect. And when you can enter the event without it being triggered, it's likely the affect is processed. Because there is a one-on-one relationship between the event and the affect. It's easy, we all know it. There's a one-on-one relationship between the event and the affect. There are very little associations because it's a one-time thing. Very often there are little associations. And very often, not always, is the team physical danger. Car accidents, robberies, things like this. And these have less defenses than self-image or shame or abandonment or things like this. So this gives us a very efficient tool, the basic protocol, to enter the pain. It's very reachable, so we can process it very easy, and we get a binary process. We start in a danger zone and we get to the safety zone. It's binary how we see it a lot of times. And it's a 1 or 2 session thing. But when we look at relational trauma, this is not one event. Here we have like a dozen events, but actually maybe there are 1,000 events if it's the whole childhood. But maybe it's not even an accumulation of events. Maybe it's more an atmosphere we lived in, a parental style, an unpredictable parent. Targeting one event will probably not address all the affect, like the octopus. Because we want to reach this affect. We have felt alone. I felt so alone, and I think it's all my fault because I'm not good enough. This has the impact on our self-image, and this is how many children have felt in their childhood. And this is the type of adults we're talking about here. But now we're also talking about relational trauma and complex trauma a bit in a random way. And we like to talk about relational and non-relational trauma while we're talking about the EMDR, because the basic protocol is famous for its simple trauma. But is it the characteristic of being a one-time event? Is this the reason, the biggest reason, that it's so easy to process the affect? Let's take two clients. One has had a one-time event of sexual abuse, which is a simple trauma, it's a one-time event, and the other one has had 3 car accidents in a short period of time, like my wife once did. With my car. All right. It's okay. I'm doing fine. Thank you. Which one of those clients will have the best results, the more easy result, the fastest results with the basic protocol? We think, indeed, it's the one with the car accidents. Why? Because there is a relational aspect involved. The person who has suffered sexual abuse will have likely felt alone. He or she will have felt not good enough, rejected. While the person who had 3 car accidents will have probably felt in danger. Maybe he or she thought he or she was going to die. But he or she didn't think, I'm alone, necessarily. Didn't think necessarily, I'm not good enough. I'm not driving good enough, perhaps, but not I'm not good enough. And this strengthens us in the idea that the relational aspect is the most important issue while separating simple trauma and complex trauma. So, relational trauma, as you ask us, is about childhood trauma. It's a home environment thing, it's an atmosphere we lived in, it's not necessarily an accumulation of events. And there are many associations. It's a big period of our lives. And the theme is mostly relational danger. I'm not good enough, I feel so alone, I feel rejected. And these have a lot of defenses and coping mechanisms. It wasn't so bad, maybe I deserved it. It was normal to get hit in the 80s. I was doing fine, or my father was a good person, he didn't mean it so bad. All types of defenses or coping mechanisms, which all have other entry points, because every defense is another entry point. Every defense defends a new pain we want to process. So if we sum it up, at the one hand we have non-relational trauma, which are car accidents, robberies, etc. The theme is mostly danger, and mostly it is simple trauma, it is one-time events. And we look at this as a top-down processing. We start with the memory, we go down to the affect, and we process the affect. And this is mostly done in 1 or 2 sessions, because there are little associations, and I call it a binary processing. While relational trauma is mostly childhood trauma, where themes are self-image, attachment. Mostly these have occurred for longer periods of time, very often in the home environment, and also very often they're intergenerational. And this is where we want to present to you today a bottom-up processing, where we address the affect and the memories come up spontaneously. We let the body talk. We let the body tell us what needs to be processed. And this obviously needs several sessions, because there are many associations. And it's not a binary process, it's more of, I think you all know this kind of process, it's waves. They go up, they go down, they go down. And they get smaller and smaller. Or sometimes bigger, but we want them eventually to get smaller. Relational trauma is what we're going to discuss today. And the question remains, or the statement remains, targeting one event will probably not address all the affect. Because a lot of time it is not a question of what has happened, it's also a question of what has not happened. They were not there for me. I was so alone, I didn't thought my parents were supporting me, for example. It's also not always a question of injury itself, it's also vulnerability. When you feel alone, you feel vulnerable. So the question remains, how will we confront the pain in childhood, or relational, complex, as you will, trauma? And this is the image we had in mind. Which one of those berries makes the jam? Is it the strawberry? Is it the raspberry? Does it matter? We don't think it matters. It's the extraction of all berries that makes the jam. It is the extraction of all traumatic info that gives us the pain. The pain is what we need to process. The pain is what we need to address. And this pain is loneliness, abandonment, self-image. And this pain, this extracting the story from the client urea intake, it makes it easier. It makes it easier for both parties, for them and for us. For them, because they often enter our practice with a very big story, a very painful story, very complex, with a lot of twists and turns. And when we can extract the essence of the story, when we can tell them, your story is really painful and really complex, and maybe the solution, the key element here is not that complex. Maybe you just felt really ashamed about yourself, and you still do. Maybe it's all about this. This is the thing, this feeling in your heart area. Maybe this is what we want to process. And it also makes it easier for us, because when we get a big story, we also get a big target plan. A big target plan can get to many, many, many sessions, and extracting the story, extracting the essence of the story can simplify the target plan to its essence, like the tentacles and the head of the octopus. This is how our roadmap looks like. On top, you have all possible entry points, like memories, the body, triggers, future fears, anything. And this leads us to the affect, and we'll process the affect. We will also deepen it in with emotionally based language, until we eventually reach the unbearable pain. The unbearable pain of childhood, where one has felt alone, rejected. It's the darkest place of our being. It's a very dark, dark place. And a lot of your clients, and maybe some of you know this place. This is the place where you felt alone, rejected, worthless. And we hear a lot of therapists are afraid to enter this pain. When they enter it, they start stabilizing. And this is the message we want to bring to you, that there might be better solutions than to stabilize it. In contrary, this place, this dark, dark place, carries the core of all our symptoms. And also, because of this, it also has the potential biggest results. So, we shouldn't be afraid of this place. We should have the courage to enter it. And later on, we will tell you how we will do this. But now, Ludwig will tell you something more about the theoretical side of our model.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Oh, microphone. It's hot in here. And I think I'm cabled, so I'm trying to get out of this. It works, good. Thank you. All right. So, I think it's easier said than done. First of all, thank you for your patience with our English. We were so much impressed by your capacity to talk English. Because normally when we talk on a conference, we have different countries, but okay. So we'll do our best. We were also told we were in front of a friendly public, so there's no stress. But it's easier said than done. When we say we have to go into the pain, but there's a fear of the pain, not only from the patient, but also from us. So let's look at this fear of affect. Our task as therapists is to reduce the stress and the fear in the client. The client who's fearful will not do EMDR. He will just stop in his or her tracks, and it won't happen. You will do this, and nothing will happen. So we have to reduce this fear. And how do we do this? Well, let me first give you an image. And I already gave the image in Bologna, but I think it's a good image, and I use it in my trainings also. Just imagine being in New York City, and then you have these famous skyscrapers, I don't know, 60, 70, 80 floors. And I would like you to imagine being on the 25th floor of such a skyscraper. You're standing in front of the window, and the window is open. And in front of you, at the other side of the street, there's another skyscraper, of course, with a 25th floor. And I would like you to imagine that between here and there's a steel cable, like a very strong cable. Not like this, but like this. You know? What we ask from our patients is to go to the other side. We know that there is the healing, but they need to have the guts to go there. Who of you would go to the other side without any safety measures? I wouldn't. So, if I would have been asked, what do you need to start to go on the, how do you call that when you have this balancing act? Tightrope, yeah. Well, it's not exactly a tightrope, but I would say give me some special shoes, like shoes that are really gripping the cable, and give me like a big stick, so to balance my act. Will you do it? 25th floor? Me neither. So they will ask me, what else do you need? And we will install safety measures. I would like to have a safety net, and not a small one, but like 10 meters wide, and not on the 20th floor, but on the 24th floor, just beneath. So if I fall, but will you do it? 25th floor, even those who are not altitudes. Agoraphobia, is it that? No. Fear of heights, yeah. I would do it, and I would like to have another safety net at the 23rd floor. So if the first one breaks, I still have a second one. Will you do it? Just imagine the client has to do something like this. And it's not impossible that the client will ask you, well, Ludwig, why don't you install the same cable on the 26th floor? Right? A thick one. And then you put in a harness, and it can be strapped in, not 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, 10 times. And then I add a little safety helmet, as if that would make a difference. But just, huh? The message with this image is, where is the therapist? The therapist is not going there. The therapist, luckily, is here. And the task of the therapist is to motivate the patient to go to the other side. If the patient doesn't feel safe, he will not go. This is the message. So we can say, let's go to the affect. Okay. But we also can be afraid. And why are we afraid? Why are we afraid? Ta-da! We are afraid that the person is going to get out of the window of tolerance. But what does that mean? It really bothers me, this term. Like there is a real window. Yeah, there's a window in my image. But we want them to get out, no? But I understand the image. You can get too high up and you get too low, too far down. You can dissociate and go away. But when I do the training, what I see often is that shortly after the training, they don't do it, EMDR. EMDR, first part. And well, they're still conceptualizing the case, which is important, but they don't go there. So, are we afraid of emotions? What does it mean, getting out of the window of tolerance? If somebody starts to scream, will you stop? Some will, others won't. If somebody starts to cry or starts to, like this deep, deep sobbing, I will stop there. But you know what I mean. Will you stop? Will you say in your head, oh, whoa, you're getting out of the window of tolerance? There is no measurement for that. Nothing. It's just your own feeling and your own fear. If you are fearful of having a patient decompensate, you will stop. And how will you do that? Although the patient has the control and can say stop, you all know this stop sign, You will say, if it's too hard, you can always stop. Okay? So we have to handle our own fears because we're projecting. We say the patient is fearful, and sometimes it's not the patient, it's us. So why are you afraid of processing? When I started EMDR a long time ago, actually Arne Hoffman, who is the Dutch trainer trained by Shapiro, when he was doing trainings after level 1, it was only 2.5 days, level 1. And then 6 weeks later there was a day, it was not supervision, but because supervision did not exist yet. But it was a day where the whole group came back. And what he did was ask this question. What would be the worst thing that could happen when you are doing EMDR processing with your patient? Just ask yourself these questions. Some people are just starting out with EMDR, and they have an answer. But even people who are working for 10, 12 years with EMDR can be fearful. What is your biggest catastrophe with EMDR? And we got the most, sometimes amazing answers. For example, just that my client would commit suicide. Yeah, that's of course bothersome. But I remember this lady telling us, well, my biggest fear is that I'm waving my fingers, my patient gets into emotion, stands up, opens the window, and jumps out of the window. And I'm on the 5th floor, she says. So what we did is she took this catastrophe, like Robin says, the future fear, and then we would ask for the most difficult image. You know what she said? Well, I'm looking down, and I see my patient in this awkward position, and there's some blood around the head. Okay, we worked on that to do a float back. And we did the float back on that, using the affect to get, of course, into the personal history. We did a whole session around the personal history to eliminate or try to diminish the non-rational fear. So the only thing that was left at the end of the day was rational fear. You have to be fearful. Fear is a good emotion. If you're not fearful, you're going to have car accidents. All right? So we see somebody who is in pain, who is in the affect, and that can activate feelings we as therapists carry in us as a result of our own loneliness, because we're going to get to this. We cannot separate ourselves from our patients. You know, the only difference between a patient and us is what? What is the only difference between a patient and us? There is the patient who pays. Right, right. And I hope you all have been on the other side, in the other chair. It should be mandatory. Right? So we have our own vulnerabilities on the self-image. Just imagine somebody who, I'm going to ask this question differently, who did not live through the suicide of a patient? Who did not live through the suicide of a patient? I hope I'm not the only one. We are the lucky ones. All the other ones had a patient committing suicide, which is devastating for the therapist, not only for the family, but also for us. If your client commits suicide, will you say to yourself, I'm a good therapist? I hope so, but I'm afraid not. So we have our own vulnerabilities. If we are too fearful, as I said, excessive anxiety will lead to our avoidance. And how to recognize our own avoidance? Let's start with that. And then we go to the client. Stabilizing. I have trainees who are masters at stabilizing. And then I ask, when are you going to start? Well. Here, it's not always the patient, it's here. Explaining. That was my case. I was explaining EMDR in the first weeks, months after the training. This is what you can do with it. And so one day my patient said, Ludwig, when are you going to start? Okay? So if you know this is based on your own fear. And then a third element is delaying the session. So you do session 1, phase 1, you do phase 2, and you say, next week we'll start. And then at the end of the session, of the next week, you discover you didn't start. And if you're lucky, your patient didn't notice. So you say, next week we'll start. And then next week you didn't start. You have to start ask yourself questions. Why is that? And then, as Olivier said, stabilizing too quickly. This is something I learned from Oliver, because as he was my student, and he worked in our trauma centrum, and he was doing things and stuff, and I said, oh my God. You know, after level 1, you have to do the protocol, and no, not really. But I saw the results. And I was forced to ask myself the question, huh? We don't have a negative cognition here. Or no? Why is it working? And one of the things he told me, and I didn't realize that, is we are way too quick in accepting the positive, which is understandable. And you have been doing some movements for 15 minutes, and then finally you get some positive reaction. And then what do? We say, okay, stay with that. So we're biased. We're showing, if you're too fearful, that, okay, yeah, you know this? And then you're hoping for a second positive reaction, because that's the end of a channel, and then you can go back to target. But no. So if you recognize this, be careful. You could be too fearful. And then going along with the avoidance. If the patient clearly is fearful, accepting too quickly that he's right to be fearful. And I think our position should be to motivate. This is not complex doing this. It's easy. I always say the most simple part of EMDR is the waving the fingers. It's a protocol. It's simple. It's 2 pages. I have a manual, and here in England the same, of 200, 300 pages. The protocol is 2 pages. Just 2 pages. It's easy. Even for those beginners, it will become easy. But getting somebody to accept it is not easy. And I didn't bring it along because I was afraid not being able to pass by customs. But normally I have this potje. What is that? A little pot. Thank you. A little pot with a Chinese red balm. I said balm. I don't know what it is, but you know, it's red, and you put it on where it hurts, and it starts to. Okay. Just watch what I do. I have it here. I open it up, and I put my finger in. Okay, so there's this red hot thing on the. Can I just put it on your neck? Oh, she says yes.
No thanks. Not if it's red
This is EMDR. This is the protocol. I can do this. No problem. It will be hot. So we can do it differently, and we will change the metaphor in the Netherlands when we go there next month. We can change this red Chinese thing in a marijuana cigarette. If I have a marijuana cigarette, I'm going to test it. I'm sure not everybody will say yes. And probably somebody will say, no, thank you. This is fear. Yeah? If you're fearful to lose control, you will not smoke the cigarette. If you're fearful to lose control during EMDR, you will not do the protocol. So we really have to handle this fear, not only from the patient, from the therapist, but also from the patient. The patient will smell our fear. It's not only dogs. And you cannot play a role as a therapist, because patients, they look right through you. And the problem is that if the patient removes our fears, the patient will start to protect us. That's the problem. But he will lose trust, and he will start avoiding. It's logical. If she or he perceives that we are fearful to do it, they will not. And the worst of the worst is this one. They start to fake improvement. I can't tell you how many times as a trainer and the supervisors, you look at a video and the trainee thinks it's a good video. And actually it is a good video because it followed the protocol, all the phases, all the steps. But it's not the EMDR. Because as soon as you do this, the patient says, oh, I feel better. That's avoidance. And then the client and the trainee thinks, oh, it's wonderful. EMDR works. It's a miracle. It exists, you can have miracles. But most of the time, it's just faking improvement. And then, of course, we use our own defenses against our own fear. And by projecting, by rationalizing, oh, it's too early to do EMDR, etc. Okay? So we need really to understand that the fear is the only hindrance to go into EMDR, our own and that of the client. Let's turn to this simple question. What is EMDR? I will give you the definition of the Dini Leliotis article of 2020 in the journal. You remember? Just read it. EMDR is an integrative client-centered approach that treats problems of daily living based on disturbing life experiences. And these continue to have a negative impact on a person throughout the lifespan. The adaptive information processing theory hypothesizes that current difficulties are caused by negative affect linked to experiences that are inadequately processed. And when this negative affect is processed to resolution using DA-BLS, oh, where's my sentence is not complete. Anyway, this is a definition in the journal. You know it? Of course you know it. But you didn't see this, did you? It's not true. I'm joking. This is not a definition. This is a definition. So the first part is the same. The second part is different. The real definition is the AIP model hypothesizes that current difficulties are caused by disturbing memories that are inadequately processed, and that symptoms are reduced or eliminated altogether when these memories are processed to resolution using the DA-BLS. So the question becomes, what is being processed in EMDR? Is it the memory or is it the negative affect? It's a very important question because it will determine whatever we do. As I am trained by Francine, I need to take her position. I'm sorry. I need to take her position, and as we will show, it is the negative affect and not the memory. And I will try to, so what I'm doing, I will make a theoretical framework around what he is doing. That was for months I said, how am I going to handle this? And so I went back to the source. And what is the source? What is the Bible? It's Francine's book. And I was very lucky because last year, 2 years ago, I translated the book finally in Dutch. And we had a 95 edition, the first edition. We had a 2001 edition. And we had a 2017 edition, which is the last time she changed her book. And I discovered that he was right. Just let me show you. We all know the AIP model. And for those who didn't hear the model or the metaphor, I like to use the metaphor of the lake and the mountains. I'm just watching my time because I'm amusing myself. I know. So I still have some time? Yeah, okay, start. Oh, yeah, so this is the lake and the mountains. This is an image that came to me when I was teaching in Switzerland, I believe. And one day, at the end of the training, we were swimming in some little lake in Switzerland. It was nice weather, it was warm, but it was in the evening, so it was cooling down. We could jump into the water from this wooden, I don't know what, in the lake. And it was just the right temperature. We were with just the right friends, these kinds of moments where you really, really have fun. And at that time, I said, this could be an image for EMDR, like the lake is all our experiences we base ourselves upon to feel good. All our resources are in this lake, right? And then when I was translating, I saw, I read the expression Francine uses frequently, which is information frozen in time, So the trauma network contains information frozen in time. And then I thought that's the glacier, because after this evening swimming in the lake, the day after we went walking in the mountains. So in the morning we put on our big shoes and our jackets to have warm and a backpack to eat and drink. And then we start off, and I must say we cheated a little bit because we took these escalators, how are they called? Yeah. So we went far ahead, and then we climbed further on. And then at lunchtime, at noon, we were really, really very high in the mountains. and it was cold. It was really cold. You cannot compare it to where we swam the day before. And we were lucky we had these strong jackets, these warm jackets. And we were next to the glacier, and I was at a certain point looking down, and I saw the lake I had swum in the day before. And I said, this is EMDR. This really is EMDR. Here, in the glacier, at the level of the glacier, I'm cold. I'm not in contact with the same resources as I am when I'm down in the lake. So the idea that the lake, you could schematize it as a blue dot, that's the water, of course, the blue water. It contains everything that was good. You're not going to do this, but is there anybody here who has been loved from the beginning? Don't show of hands, no show of hands. I hope so. Just know, many here have not been lucky enough to be in that position. So the lake will not have the same size for everybody. And when we talk about relational trauma, it can be much more limited, but it's always there. You cannot imagine there would not be a lake. The fact that the patient is still alive means there's a lake. Although small, but there's a lake. And what is the problem? What in the AIP model, what do we say? We say that the information that has not been integrated. Why? Because the child was too small. Imagine your father doing something. Do not imagine it, but just a way of speaking. You, in the morning, you have to be at the same table with him. You have to be able to look him into the eyes. So you need to put away all the things you cannot integrate because you're too small, because you do not have the necessary resources to integrate it. And I like to show that in my trainings with a bottle. Can I just use it? Thank you. When this is too difficult, the child has to put it away. So, in the morning, he can be in contact or she can be in contact with her father and not being aware of this. And we think, and this is what I call the big illusion. All of us, our big illusion is that it's not there anymore because we look this way. And the child, of course, the child has no choice but to look that way because it needs to develop. And especially it needs to stay in contact with the adult. It has no choice. But, this is getting heavy. It's not gone, it's still there. And it is a cost. What it costs me now is energy. But if we put away things, it's not gone. That's the big illusion. Many of our patients says, or even in trainings, in trainings, you need a little problem to work on. You do this also in United States, not UK, probably. Sometimes they say, oh, I don't have a problem anymore. It's not impossible. But when I say, for all those who don't have a problem anymore, just take your phones and ask your husband if something... But somebody who says, I don't have a problem anymore, is not aware that there is something that is the basis of the problem that's still there. All right? I put it there, and then what do we do with... I remember this patient coming to me and say, well, I have this... happened to me once, People don't come for that. But she came and said, I have a problem with a coworker. And I said, what's the problem? I don't know, she says. I said, well, what do you mean you don't know? I just can't stand him. I said, why not? I don't know. So what do? We try to find out what's happening. She didn't know the first session. But she did know when we started to do exercises on where does it come from. You know these exercises, like float back. And suddenly she said, oh, I know. And I'm sorry for people who don't have lips here, but she said it's because he doesn't have lips. Meaning, you have people with lips not very visible, and you have people with very visible lips. It's okay, yeah? We're all different. But like who? Like Daddy. She wasn't even aware that when she was seeing him, this got activated. And a part of her mind got into the bottle. And she was looking, as Francine says, the present becomes the past. The past becomes the present. And she was looking through the bottle. She was not seeing the coworker. She was reacting to her father, you know. So this is the big illusion. Our task is not just to do this, but to find a way to get to this affect that is kept in. This is not a cold bottle. This is a bottle with boiling hot water. And as a matter of fact, it stinks. So our art as a therapist is not doing this. Our art is creating the condition where the patient and we as therapists, we dare to go there. And then I assure you, if she takes the cigarette, please take it this time. Please, please, just for... If she would have taken the cigarette, she would have felt the... So that's why I say EMDR works always. The protocol works always, always. But you need to be able to create the right circumstances with the client. And does it always work? No. Can you help everybody? I can't. And we have limits. Because I can be a trigger for my patient also. But I'm not going to go in there. So do you understand this bottle? This is the affect. This is the red. And this is represented like the ice in the mountains in my metaphor. Okay. We can change words. We can change lake by adaptive information. And be careful. The blue is not only the positive. The blue contains the positive, of course, but all our negative experiences that are integrated in the lake. You know what happens when we integrate an experience? We learn. And the things we don't need, we put away forever. But what we need, if you never encountered a bastard, sorry. Yeah? If you were not lucky enough to meet a bastard, I'm just going to put away the bottle, then if you don't recognize a bastard, then you have a problem. Basically, you will keep on meeting bastards. So if you have had the luck of having an ex-partner and you got away, and you can keep away, and I hope you have learned that what can you learn from a bastard? That you don't have to listen to what he says. You have to look at what he does, right? That's a life lesson. So the lake not only contains our positive life experiences, but also our life lessons. And that's where the word resilience comes into play. The resilience is a word of what I call the blue. We know that the blue is basis of mental health, emotional health, physical health, relational health, and is the basis of pathology. The red is the basis of pathology. This is a symptom. The symptom in EMDR exists because we have non-integrated bottles. You could say adult perspective in the blue, child perspective in the red, because we are talking about relational trauma. We're talking about childhood trauma. And I would like to propose to change child perspective in the red, not only we, by the word unbearable pain. It is this that we need to treat. This needs to go over there. This needs to be integrated in the blue. Since we are presenting the affect-focused EMDR model, we're talking only about affects. We have positive affect and we have negative affect. And the only thing that motivates us in life, sorry for the English, is we go towards what is positive and we go away of what is negative. We only have this movement. Love is positive, we go towards love. Pain is negative, we go away from pain. These are the only moves, and I think even the Dalai Lama says it, so I'm right. Somebody told me that the Dalai Lama talks about this boat with the 2 seats. Anybody knows? Okay, no problem. Okay, let's continue. What is the problem in the relational trauma? This is the problem. We need to defend ourselves. The child learns to defend itself against what is too painful, the unbearable pain of disconnection. Relational trauma is the unbearable pain of disconnection. And how do we defend? What are our affect regulating strategies? What are our defenses? Name some of the defenses we have. Also you, not only the clients. Denial. Come, I want 10. Denial. Minimization. Pardon me? Distraction. Avoidance. Dissociation. Anybody watching Netflix? Drinking. Smoking. Not you. Not you. Okay? So the child needs to develop coping strategies or survival strategy, whatever name you give it. For example, if the child learns to deal with a narcissistic mother or father or both, you know the child does not exist. The child learns not to exist. It's a survival strategy, but it's a defense. Okay? So luckily, we have this green. And the arrow means this. This is the arrow. I want to keep this at a distance. And the problem is, as I always say, that it costs. And what it costs is the movement from there to there. We forget who we are. If I learn to please and I become a pleaser, it's a defense. It's a defense. And what will happen in therapy? They will bring in the defense. And you say, on a scale from 0 to 10, where are you now? After 20 minutes of waving, the client sees, ooh, he's getting tired. And she says, I'm going to say 0 then. So she will protect us. It's a defense. And it prohibits contact with it. So you could say this is like a wall. And we say in EMDR, yes, EMDR is having the blue and the red, double attention. Go into the red and stay in the present. Double attention, and then wave the fingers. But what will you do if there's a wall in between? And what we are saying is that since this is a very, very difficult affect, we have to also target the green. Look, and we're not the only ones saying this. If you have seen Dolores Mascara talking about dysfunctional information processing system, also this is dysfunctional information. It was functional in the beginning. But 20 years later, it's not functional. That's like this. My very first patient in therapy, I'll never forget. I was 23, 24, a real patient, all alone. And I was still sitting behind the desk. And I said, what can I do for you? Like she was buying a bread or something. Huh? And what can I do for you? And I will never forget what she said. She said, I don't know who I am. And I was sitting there, okay. This was not in my textbooks, you know. You don't know who you are. No. She had identified with a false self. And she left her true self. I couldn't understand that at the time. Due to the trauma she has lived through, she was not there anymore. It's like an older man here, you know. If you ask your wife, what do you want, darling? And your darling says, whatever you want. It's annoying, eh? I tell you. No. What do you want? Oh, whatever you like. No, please. Oh, for me, it's all the same. But I'm asking you here. I'm not asking you here. You see? And this is where people, and this is the cost people pay to go away from the pain. They not only go away from the pain, but they also go away from themselves. And they create a false self, a false narrative. There are strategies to work with the green. I will talk about this later in the afternoon. Are you still following me? Yes. Nice. Okay. This is us. It is not just pain. It is unbearable pain. Not to be connected as a child, it's not possible. You just die. You know what happens with the little elephant who's pushed away from the herd? Dies. So the child is doing everything to keep the connection. This pain we don't want. And of course, this is a bodily feeling. It's not in the head, as he's rightly said. It's in the body. But of course, if we try to verbalize it, then we can get this. We can get the dysfunctional emotional cognition. I used to call it the negative cognition. But I think he's right. The negative cognition is not the right word because that's in the head. We want the expression of the feeling. So if we use the word dysfunctional emotional cognition, then we are right on track. How to recognize a good emotional cognition, a good negative cognition? Well, when it touches the patient. Okay? To summarize, we have healthy resources, and these resources, which were healthy once, have become unhealthy resources. You talked about dissociation. It's a very good defense. I mean, if somebody tells me she was not in her body when she was being abused, and she was watching through the window what was happening outside, that's a wonderful dissociation, because she was not feeling her body at the time. But you can disconnect from everything. You can disconnect from your body, you can disconnect from your emotions, you can disconnect for reality, you can disconnect from the story, and you have this dissociative amnesia. But it has become unhealthy now. It was very healthy at the time, but it has become unhealthy because there is no choice anymore. Drinking is good, I mean, unless you don't like alcohol, but drinking relaxes, it's a fact. Smoking, if you use the right strain, right, it will relax you. Oh, she's looking at me. I like to drink. Or I like Netflix. I have nothing against it. I like eating. We had wonderful food yesterday. Thank you for that. It was wonderful. Forage, it was called. Forage. Forage was really good. But if you eat too much, you have a problem. But what does society do? Society identifies you with your defense. He is an alcoholic. She is a pleaser. He is a narcissist. So society, and the person himself or herself identifies with the green and loses choice. What do we do as therapists? We go install healthy resources. This is our phase 2. So that the client has choice. Once the client has choice, there's no problem anymore. Right? Okay. So I want to add a self. We have the adult self, we have the child self, and we can add the reactive self. Reactive self meaning there's no control. It just happens automatically. I cannot not please. I cannot not drink. I cannot not avoid. I cannot not go away or dissociate. Watch carefully the screen now, because I'm going to do this. Click. You see it change now. You see? Ta-da! You can change their true self, false self, and hurt self. And in some literature, you have these words. For me, the AIP model is really wonderful because it all comes together. Actually, I call this in my training the model of human functioning, actually. But okay. So this person says, I don't know who I am anymore. Exactly. But let's not go into that. Let's stick to our adult self, reactive self, and child self. And during COVID, I was making this presentation because there was nobody in my training room. And I was looking at these 3 positions, and I read self, self, self. And I said, yes, actually, when I was in the mountains, I was not feeling the same things as when I was swimming in the lake. So I started thinking about awareness and consciousness. And I want you to ask yourself this question. Where is awareness when the patient or we are reacting in an adaptive way? Well, that's why I put it in yellow. When we are responding to the world in touch with our internal and external resources, all is well. It does not mean that we don't have our backpack behind us, but it is not activated. We're walking the world and we're doing good. We're not going into therapy because we're managing. It's no problem. And as Olivier will say, if we have a patient who's, you see, I make a little person of this blue. Yeah, you saw that, yeah. So, if the patient is able to look back in himself, and if the patient can say, yes, sometimes I react in uncontrollable ways because I'm triggered into the hurt. A patient who can do that is not in the green. A patient who can take this meta position is in the blue, right? The awareness is in the blue. There are moments actually that I drink because blah, blah. If you cannot reach this position with a patient, you cannot do therapy. Because if you're stick here, there's no blue and there's no red, right? What happens if you are triggered? Where is the awareness when we are triggered? It's in the red. We are in this deep, deep pain. And we can be overwhelmed. We can be unaware of the present. We can dissociate from the present. This is losing the patient. We don't want to lose the patient. We want to have double attention. But here the patient is gone. We all live through this with patients. Suddenly they're gone. They're disconnected, powerless. So there is a possible re-traumatization. I don't think we can re-traumatize patients if we keep into contact. That's what I say to my trainees. Don't be fearful. Just keep contact. Nothing will happen. But if you panic, it's done. If you panic, it's done. So actually, you should not be accepted in an EMDR training if you're not able to stabilize the patient and to know what's happening. We'll take questions at the end. All right. Luckily, this does not happen much because when there's a trigger from the inner or outer world, well, even before going into the red, we go into the green and we start defending. The problem is the patient who identifies with this green forgets that he or she is not living in the now, she's living in the defense now. She thinks she's handling the present, but she's disconnected from herself, from her true self. So when do we do EMDR? Where is the awareness when we do EMDR? What is this famous double attention of dual awareness? We ask the patient to think about what's painful, and we have the adult in our session. And then we do, of course, under these conditions. There has to be safety, there has to be control, and there has to be connection. These are the three themes of EMDR, by the way. Connection is self-image. How do we develop self-image? Through the eyes of the other. So if, as a therapist, we can validate and love the patient will feel that and will feel connected to us. Under these conditions, we can do EMDR. And you see, no defense is needed. And that's why I put it in black. And then we start doing this. And then what happens? Look carefully. I really worked on this. Hepla. You see? Something new starts. That's called integration. You know, blue and red gives purple. Thank you. Just to show that it's a fallacy to think that people will be as they were before. They will always learn, they will always grow because of the traumatic event or feeling we are going to integrate. And then they can start loving themselves again. Okay? This is the model. The affect is present in the model. The only question is, these red trauma networks, is it memories or is it affect? You can see we have a little suggestion for you. Yeah? It is affect, and I'm going to show you why. That's what I discovered rereading the book of Shapiro. Look what she says. She talks about the painful affect from childhood. I'm just going to give you some quotes. The pain of childhood continues to be triggered in the present. Okay? Second one, childhood events can have a lasting negative effect on the self and the psyche and can be conceptualized as encoding negative affects and sensations that spontaneously arise when triggered by present conditions. She's not talking about memories, she's talking about encoded negative affect, pardon me. When the traumatic memory is stimulated, the dysfunctionally stored affect is felt, and the negative cognition serves to convey its meaning. That's what we were showing. We have the negative affect, and if we want to express it in words, then we have the negative emotional cognition. All right, and then the last one. When the traumatic memory is stimulated, the dysfunctionally stored affect is felt, and the negative cognition serves... Oh, that's what I said. Sorry, I was a little bit later. Sorry, I have to look there. That's the first one. Second one, why do we have phase 3 in our protocol? Why? Well, to go to the affect. Why do we look for the most difficult moment and the most difficult image? Because of the word difficult. We don't ask what's the image, we ask what's the most difficult image. We ask what is the most charged negative idea. about oneself. I'm not worth anything. What are the emotions? And then, what is the level of negative affect? Sorry for the joke. Of course, it's the SUDS. But is it from 0 to 10? What is the value of the affect? You know, we don't ask for the emotion there. Some people do that when they are at this level of, okay, they got anger, sadness, and then they ask, and on a scale from 0 to 10, how much anger do you feel? No. Anger is an interpretation of an affect. And this question is looking to find the affective charge. And then the last one, where do you feel it in your body? So you see, in this phase 3, we have only one goal, which is to go to the affect, to really activate. Question, and what if it's not so much about the memory as it is about the affect? And what if the memory is not the only way to get to the affect? So you see what I'm doing? I'm creating a theoretical framework around what he was doing, which I could not understand in the beginning. Okay, she says literally that the affect is more important than the negative cognition. Because she says, while there's always the page, page 41 of her book, while a person's beliefs stated via language are clinically useful distillation of experience, it is the affect feeding them that is the pivotal element in pathology. Or negative beliefs are actually verbalization of a disturbing affect. You see? And then the last one. The maladaptive cognition is the verbalization of the stored dysfunctional affects. Conclusion. Affect is more fundamental than the negative cognition. It's not because affect is not verbalized that it means it's not there. It's like children. Children do not have words, but they can have affect. You see the primacy of affect in the body. Number 4, I have 6, and then we go to eat a little bit. Okay, just a little patience. Just in time. Yeah, 10 minutes and 5 minutes for questions. Oh, perfect. 5 minutes left and last questions. 5 minutes left, okay. All right. Number 4. Affect scan and starting point for associations. Affect scan technique you all know. We can skip that. Using the affect to bridge to other memories in the past. And of course, she stresses the importance of affect regulating strategies. Look up the word in her book, affect regulating strategies. And she literally says a resource is a positive affect state. That's the blue. You know, one of the biggest problems in the beginning is that people do a safe place and they think they have to reinforce the safe place. And say, no. You don't reinforce the safe place. You reinforce the bodily state created by accessing this safe place. We don't say, and let the image become clearer. No. We say, and when you think about this, feel it in your body. And I invite you to make this feeling stronger by following my fingers slow. All right? And then the most difficult point, and this will give you some food for thought while you're eating. This is something I discovered, and to my dismay, I discovered it way too late, because I became a trainer in 2003, which is 20 years ago, and I only discovered this part last year. As I was translating her book, you know, Francine was all about research, right? And she re-edited her book, and it was, in the beginning, research was so much of her book, and then Dick, and then the third edition, Dick. I was not so much interested in the research, so I bought the second edition, I didn't reread it. I just bought it to have it in my library. And I thought, if ever I need research, I can read it. And then in 2017, I bought also the third edition to have it in my library, but I didn't read it until I translated it. And then I stumbled onto something dead, and we were very lucky, because in Bologna, I think there were way more people than here, and we asked, who of you, a show of hands please, knows about Francine's affect valence hypothesis? Which is very reassuring, because it means that my colleague trainers in England and the UK and Scotland and Ireland don't know either. So I hope to inform you all. It's something she says which boils down to what is written here. The glacier is frozen in time, information frozen in time, that's clear. And then she says it's information isolated in its own neural network, stored in the original state-specific form. That's right. it's because of the intensity of the affect. I repeat, it's because of the intensity of the negative affect that the memories are locked into a network. So it's the affect, the binding component of the network, not the memories. And this is the jam. We have many berries, but what results is actually the affect, the negative affect. All right? Okay, let's continue. The stronger the dysfunctional affect, the greater the network stability. It's just a hypothesis, but this hypothesis is so easy to understand and so clear to me. It's because the stronger the negative affect, the stronger the network. The same for the positive networks. If you have a capacity, if you have a resource very strong in you, it's because you have many, many events who have boiled down to this capacity. If you are empathic beings, it's because you have had many experiences and you have this positive valence, this positive affect, which binds together a positive network. Just like you have a negative network that is bound together by this strong affect. Okay? So, what I say to my students is you have two trampolines. Yes, I have to stop, I know. I'm there. Okay? What is the word for trampoline?
Trampoline, yeah.
No. Is it the same word?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So, where do you want to jump in a trampoline? You want on the side, to jump on the side? You want to jump in the middle, where you feel it the most. That's what we're going to do. We're going to go to the core affect. And then we say, when we are going to weaken this affect, the binding factor will diminish. And I give you a last metaphor to explain this. And this is something I read in an article of Bodil 2009. You could compare this to our solar system. You have the sun, which has a very big gravitational pull. A very strong gravitational pull, very strong affect. And all the planets are turning around this strong affect. This is the binding component. And even Pluto is not going away, because it's still under the spell of this strong affect, the strong gravitational field. So just imagine that the sun would weaken and would scramble, and the attraction would diminish. What would happen with Pluto? It would be attracted to other solar systems, to other memory networks. And this is what happens in EMDR. We start with the most intense affect, we do EMDR on it, the affect diminishes, and it's like it can make connections with other solar systems, which we call adaptive networks. And then one question, I believe.
Yes.
Yes.
So thank you so much, Ludwig and Olivier. Can we have one question from the audience, and then there's going to be a brief announcement just before lunch. So does anybody have a question? If you can raise your hand, and if the room monitor could go and give you a microphone. It could be, Ludwig and Olivier, that you've made it so clear, or it could be that people are just really hungry. Oh, there is one question. Anoni here. Anoni. So a microphone here.
Here.
Where is the microphone, please? Yeah, thank you.
I was just going to ask, if it's all in Francine's book, do we really need to call it affect-focused EMDR? It's just EMDR, isn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh, okay.
So that is exactly the point we're making. Yeah. But because we don't see it...
Olivier calls it affect-focused EMDR.
Yeah, of course, because it's affect-focused.
Yeah, but that is EMDR, isn't it?
Of course it is.
Okay.
Messages.
Did you want to respond, Olivier, or is that... Can you wait till later? Yeah, okay. So Marion just wants to make a quick... can I just thank Olivier and Ludwig? And there will be more after the break. So Marion, do you want to make the announcement?
Okay, I just before you move for lunch, there's just a couple of things. One's a practical announcement. Before I get to that, we've been saying throughout the conference, and also you would have seen, the statement that we put around about if anyone experiences anything that makes them feel uncomfortable. Well, actually, a few people did approach me during the break, because that was the first opportunity they had, saying there was some stuff left over from yesterday for people. Now, we have this statement that we put in the brochure, and I just want to just flag it to you, not it as a defensive response to the things that people were saying to me, but just by way of explanation that obviously people do raise things that may challenge us. But having said that, I do want to say that, I am sorry for anyone who does feel uncomfortable with some of the things, although we're left feeling uncomfortable. And I think we need to look at what we might need to do there over and above apologise. Apologise, but without taking responsibility, which I know can maybe sound a bit of a contradiction there. But I do want people to come and talk to me about it. So I just wanted to sort of address that. I didn't want it to be left over lunch without addressing it, okay? So I just want to say that. I also just want to say thank you for people making space apropos what I said at the beginning of this session, because it is not okay that some people are left standing and not being able to find a seat. The thing I did forget to mention, and I think actually it's felt very silent during this session, but a few people said about people speaking through presentations, and I couldn't hear anything down here, but just again to be mindful, if you feel you want to talk to your neighbour, perhaps leave the session. It's completely fine to leave, but it is distracting if people are talking. So just a few things about being sensitive to each other and to the experience in the room. The last thing to say is that we are having the AGM, and people have asked about for the child and adolescent session. Of course, the restriction on numbers doesn't apply to people online. So even if you haven't registered, of course, you can go into that session. Okay, that's enough for me for now. Okay.